One of the most famous biblical stories is the account of Jesus traveling across the water in the boat. This story has been shared across countless sermons and Bible studies all across the globe and throughout time. But often, when I've heard the story of Jesus crossing the water mentioned, particular details are usually missed or ignored or skipped over. These details are important, though, because they show us things about Jesus and his character and how he deals with us. A lot of the people I've spoken with struggle to receive the promises of God, not because they don't believe that the promises are real or even true, but because they don't think that they deserve those promises. And much of this doubt can be traced back to an erroneous estimation of God's character and how he treats us. So today, I'd like to share with you some of the things that God has revealed to me in the story of Jesus crossing the water. And it's my hope that this encourages you today in God's character and in your standing with him. Let's get started. Welcome to Thriving Branch. I'm Jim. Today we are looking at the journey across the water. And of course, this is referring to the journey with Jesus and his disciples in the boat as they cross over the sea. Now, the scripture account is found in Luke chapter 8, starting at verse 22. And immediately upon beginning to read this account, we can see something interesting. Luke chapter 8, verse 22 says, "Now it came to pass on a certain day that he," being Jesus, "went into a ship with his disciples, and he said to them, 'Let us go over to the other side of the lake.' And they launched forth." Now, those of you who know the story know that it was not a particularly peaceful ride. They encountered a storm. But here in verse 22, as they're just setting out on their journey, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Now, you might not think very much of that at first. It sounds like Jesus is just saying, "Hey, let's cross over this body of water." But he's saying much more than that. Let us go over to the other side. What I find interesting about this is that Jesus, being God, already knew what was going to happen. He knew about the coming storm. Yet he also declared what the outcome would be. They were going to cross over. Take a few seconds to process that statement. Before the journey even began, Jesus stated the outcome. He said the result. Keep that fact in mind as we continue. In verse 23, we see that as they were traveling across the water, Jesus fell asleep. We see that the winds increased, the waves surged, the boat began taking on water. Verse 23 specifically says that they were in danger. The threat was real. The disciples weren't imagining the storm. The storm was real, and they were frightened. But they forgot Jesus' words at the outset of the journey. Forgetfulness, especially of Jesus and his words, can have a dangerous and deadly consequence, because the enemy's one and only tactic is to pull our attention and focus off of Jesus. And that is when we are vulnerable. See, this all comes down to understanding God's character at the heart of it. Several of Jesus' disciples were fishermen. They were skilled on the water. They knew how to sail and how to survive in the deep. They were able to assess the situation as precarious. But as I mentioned, they forgot the words of Jesus, which had already guaranteed their safety. They weren't going to drown halfway through the journey. They were going to cross over all the way to the other side because that's exactly what Jesus said they would do. The disciples, however, did not yet have a solid understanding of Jesus' nature or his character. Notice what they cried out in verse 24. They said, "Master, Master, we are perishing." And in Mark chapter 4, verse 38, the parallel account of this journey, we see that they actually accused Jesus, saying, "Don't you care that we're perishing? Don't you care that we're going to die?" You see, they understood Jesus as master, as teacher, as Lord. And indeed, he is all of those things. But they didn't understand his heart. They didn't understand his love and his care for them. They saw him as master. They saw him as teacher. They saw him as Lord. But they didn't know his heart. See, your response matters. Your response to a particular circumstance, situation, perception, thought, feeling, emotion matters. Jesus' response to their cries is remarkable. He immediately rebuked the wind and the waves, commanding them with the divine authority that the storm ceases. Then Jesus turns to his disciples and he addresses their response. He says, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" You see, Jesus already gave them the information about their successful journey. He gave them the faith, the information, before they even set out. He told them that they would cross over to the other side. The storm ultimately didn't matter. What mattered was their response to the storm in the light of what Jesus said. Why did you doubt? As if to ask, why did you doubt what I told you in the beginning? You see, each of us has been given faith. Each of us has been given information by God regarding his promises, regarding his character, regarding his nature, regarding healing, provision, and so much more. But to receive those and act appropriately, we must first know his character and his love for us. There's so many examples of Jesus' character and love in the scripture. You've probably heard me say before that I believe the proper way to study scripture is to see Jesus. That's also something that Jesus himself said. The scriptures are they which speak of me. The scriptures show you me. So when you're studying a particular scripture, it doesn't matter if it's the Old Covenant writings or the New Covenant writings. Whenever you study a scripture, Jesus is always there. You can find him in every area of scripture. And it will always show you something about his character, his love, what he has accomplished, and what your status is in him. And we've studied and will continue to study that. For now, I hope that this has encouraged you today, and I look forward to thriving with you again. Be blessed.